Hey YouTube, Mike the Alpha Hoarder here. If you're new to the channel, thanks for joining me. I hoard, collect, talk about, and admire Alpha cards. And while I do, I'll rant about one thing or another. And hopefully you'll stick around and enjoy the ride. So today, I'm going to answer a question that I got in an email from a viewer. So the gentleman asked me, why do I favor the near mint cards as much as I do? After all, Alpha cards are super rare, all of them. So shouldn't investors, this question was specifically on the financial side, shouldn't investors interested in this set look for cards in all conditions? Why don't I? So I figured I would answer that question because there's a few things that are worth thinking about when you're deciding how to structure your own collecting habits, even if some of those decisions are going to be different from the ones I'm making. But I thought we could talk through it. So my general answer is, yes, I think you should. If you care about Alpha, then yes, this stuff is so rare, a common and uncommon or an actual rare, I don't care. It's all so rare. As long as there is demand for vintage cards, these will have a market. Even if the hobby collapses, these will be the last to go, in my humble opinion. Any condition, any Alpha card, yes, I think that is worth considering. And I think there are good arguments to be made that there is a investment value there. Now, just quickly, because that sounds a hair like investment advice. It's not. Even Alpha cards, of course, are incredibly speculative. And there's scenarios that could make Alpha tank. You know, if Rudy got hit by a Taco Bell meat shipping truck. Things happen. You know, look at this new thing with Legends. You know, they found piles of sealed Legends. You know, nobody saw that coming. I'm not saying something like that would happen here, but the point is, you never know. Risk is there. But assuming you're on board with the risk of CCGs, Alpha is my pick. Near mint is my first pick, but any condition. So let's dig into that a bit. If I readily admit that all conditions have some good potential value, then why do I emphasize near mint? You know, after all, for the premium that I pay for, you know, some of the rares that I've picked up in the good condition, I could probably get multiple different rares in MP condition. And so there's a few reasons that I choose to do it that way. Most of them are a consequence of my particular situation, my particular collection at this moment in time. And so, like I said before, what I do isn't necessarily what you should do, but I figure we could think through it together. So as far as my personal decisions on this, when I started collecting Alpha, I did collect all conditions. I didn't go straight for near mint and only near mint. These days, I really do try to stick to minty cards, you know? Not necessarily gradably minty, but let's say LP plus or better. There's personal reasons and financial reasons for that. And I broke it out into a couple bullets that I think are useful. So first, rarity and upside. So, I proposed in a different video an attrition rate of good condition cards of at least 91%. What I did, in case you didn't see the video, I generally estimated about half of all cards were lost due to destruction, poor storage, playware, things like that. And then I looked at the distribution of listings across TCG Player to sort of get an approximate bell curve for how the inventory that exists now falls across the different grading scales, near mint versus lower condition. And then I used the population reports to drill into that near mint slice to figure out how many were sort of truly near mint, which I would call 8.5 or better. And yeah, these are nice. So the estimate I came up with was that best case scenario, something like 9% of the original cards exist in nice condition. And it's probably less than that. And most of those are probably, in collections. But whatever the number is, it's constantly shrinking due to inevitable loss, damage, diamond hands, if you want to call it. Cards are just disappearing and not coming back. It happens. And to me, this implies a greater upside potential, because attrition of condition will sort of drive a growing price gap. So I'm imagining that $1 set aside on a near mint card will perform better than the same dollar set aside on an MP card. Now, that is a speculation, and I could be wrong about that. If players ultimately become the main demand group for old cards, for instance, then I'll just be totally wrong. But, my thinking is when you start talking about high-end old stuff, the majority of the volume of money that's transacting is from collectors. I think collectors are more likely to spend premiums compared to players. The player mentality is a little bit more, it's different. You're trying to get something that's purely functional. You need a Raiders in your deck. You don't really need to care what it looks like. You just need the card to play the format. That's a different thinking than, someone like me who's going to spend hours a day staring at a piece of cardboard. And so someone like me will spend more on that than someone who's only a player, I think. Again, this is the thought process that goes into making this decision. So, while I do think there's a strong market for the beat-up cards, those players do make up a whole portion of that market. They want the cards without breaking the bank. I do think Alpha specifically has a very strong transition into the collector side of the market. And so personally, I want to have nicer cards in order to appeal to the largest possible base. So I'm wagering that the liquidity will be better if my supply appeals to the collectors. And in this space, liquidity is always the biggest concern, and so I prioritized it. Which leads me to reason number 2. Liquidity. It is harder to move a whole bunch of low value cards on the market than it is to move a smaller number of high value cards. You can ask any dealer. There's plenty of YouTube videos from dealers in sports cards and in trading card games that'll talk about this. But you ask a dealer to ask what they'd pay for a collection, a $10,000 collection made up of $520 cards, and compare that to a $10,000 collection made up of 5 $2,000 cards. And I guarantee you will get way more. The dealer would spend way more on the latter as opposed to the former. I imagine you'd get at best 50 cents on the dollar in the first case, whereas in the second case, maybe 85 cents on the dollar. I'm not a dealer, but these are numbers that I've sort of heard. And it just makes sense. The overhead of moving lots of small cards is rough. The amount of transactions, separate transactions needed, just means it's a bigger time sink. Nothing, everything else aside. And then you've got tighter margins on smaller cards. The shipping is a larger percentage of the card value. There's just, it's a pain in the ass. Whereas a small number of higher value cards, are just easier to move. Possibly you can move them in one place with one transaction. Probably easier to move privately. And their margins can just be better. And so if this is relevant to me specifically, may or may not be relevant to the viewer, because I'm accumulating so many cards. For what we might call normal people, this maybe won't matter. You know, if your total collection is 20 alpha cards, you're probably not going to be facing this specific liquidity problem. You know, you take the time you need to move your 20 cards. No big deal. But when you get into hundreds and thousands of cards, this becomes something that needs to be planned for. And, you know, the size of my collection also means that diversification within the set is less important to me. And so rather than picking specific cards or anything like that, I'm trying to emphasize near mint, just because to me that's the highest optimization of that particular liquidity equation. I would rather take $1,000 and put it on one card than take that $1,000 and put it on 3 or 4 cards, because it will be easier eventually if I choose to unwind that position to move the 1 card versus to move the 3. So that's specific to my collecting style, and it's a consequence of my specific collection, so that may or may not apply to you. But hopefully the thought process is useful to you, as I said. And then, related to liquidity, is also number 3, gradability. So, as you may know if you have followed the channel at all, I'm not a huge fan of graded cards. Or, I guess that's a little misleading. I don't have a problem with graded cards. I own graded cards. I prefer raw cards. So, in any case, I definitely would not dream of disputing the financial benefits of graded cards. First of all, they increase liquidity. Pretty much no doubt about that. And second of all, high grades command pretty incredible multipliers, especially the really high grades. And you can see that, I think, on particularly high-end raw stuff. You know, if you've got the right network, you definitely can get similar premiums. You know, if you're dealing with people who know what they're looking at. But it's not going to be the same as a graded card, where the number's up there and it's been done, and, you know, it's plain for all to see. And so one of the reasons that I'm favoring the near mint cards is because I know I can convert them into graded cards if liquidity becomes an issue. And that's just a much less useful out if your cards aren't in great condition. And so, you know, you're seeing a theme. I think liquidity is something I just keep coming back to. So, you know, arguably for alpha, grading any condition card is possibly worthwhile. That might be true. The authenticity stamp is worth a lot, you know, certifying that there's no inking and all that. The subgrades really help for online transactions where pictures just aren't going to give buyers the same confidence. You know, that it increases liquidity for sure. Depending on the grading fees, you know, you're not going to see premiums until you get up to, say, 8.5 or higher in most cases. So the grading fee may not make it worth it. But in any case, for cleaner cards, you know, I just do think that the ability to grade it if I need to is something that helps me stomach the liquidity risk. And so that's something I value. And then number 4 is personal preference. So another thing you'll know if you follow the channel is that I am foremost a collector. I'm doing all this because I love these cards. The amount of time I spend looking at them is unhealthy. But it makes me happy, so what are you going to do? Obviously, they're an investment too. As I've said, the amount of money that goes into this just wouldn't make sense if it wasn't also an investment. It's not an investment that I need to return to me, the best ROI of all possible investments. What's this? Oh, so I'm sort of okay with a less than fantastic return, but it is an investment. Nonetheless, I want to collect what I like and what I love. And I like the look of a really clean card. I totally get the argument of how played cards sort of carry a story with them. And, they definitely do. There's no doubt about that. And it's cool to see that. I can appreciate that for sure. But, if when it comes down to what I'm putting my money on, one factor is just what I want to collect. And it just, it does something for me to see a pack fresh card. It's a little time capsule that's jumping a span of 30 years, and it's just awesome. And so, I am motivated to seek the near mint cards for the collector side as well. And so there you go. Those would be the 4 main reasons why I value near mint cards. Now, one little bonus one here that I saved for the end, just because I know most people tune out, much earlier on. Oh, was that bent? Just a little bit, huh? Something's going on there. What, did somebody do a bend test this way? Yeah, well. One last point I'd like to bring up. It's something I'm tracking that might actually be a counterpoint to my approach. I bring it up just because sometimes I kind of like thinking out loud here. A lot of times the comments and the responses actually help forward my thinking on different things. So I'll bring this up. But one thing I've been wondering, and I just wish I had tracked better from the beginning. If anyone has data on this, please share. But I really wish I had better tracked the spread between near mint and MP over time. So do those two grow sort of in step? Do they grow apart with a increasing gap? Do they come together and converge? Do they converge to the higher end or to the lower end? These are things I really would like to know. And I've always tracked prices, between rarity within a set and between sets. But, I always normalized the condition to LP just to make that a sort of one-dimensional analysis. And now I'm wishing I could tease that data back apart. So I tried to generate a proxy for this. What I did is I went on TCG Player, and I pulled up, you can do not the grid, but the sort of row listings where they actually show the card and then usually the top 3 listings. I did that for alpha, for commons, just because that has the most market depth, so commons are going to be the most stable, most reliable prices. I filtered to alpha, to commons, and to near mint, and then I went down all of that. It's about 8 pages, 2 or 3 listings. Most of them have 3 listings. And I just took a simple average. And then I changed the filter to alpha common MP. And then I did beta common near mint MP and unlimited common near mint and MP. So what I'm doing there is I'm using the set as a proxy for time. And I don't know how good of a marker that is. Maybe you can tell me what you think. But the idea is, if you assume that alpha, beta, and unlimited are on the same exponential curves, it's just that the curve is offset, then in principle, if you were to look at, say, the spread between beta, it's sort of like you're looking back in time at what alpha was. And so, in this, based on current prices, I think it's something like maybe like a 4-year gap. So looking at beta is sort of like looking back in time 4 years at alpha, and to unlimited, maybe another 4 years. This is really rough. This is really hand waving. But I did do this exercise, and is a little bit interesting. Hell from Beyond. Man, these are so clean today. This is a fine day. It's a very fine day. So Alpha MP's commons had an average listing price of $77, and near mints had $152 average. So the near mint price premium today for alphas is 196%. I did the same thing for beta. MP average is $20.79, and near mint is $40.45. Again, these are listing prices, not sale prices. So, like I said, this is all very hand wavy. But in any case, that spread is 194% near mint premium for beta. And unlimited, the same thing. MP average listings $1.27 for the commons, and near mint is $4.09 for the commons. Now that is a spread, a premium, a near mint premium of 322%. So if my assumption is true about the way the sets represent a sort of time translated interpretation, then it implies the spread shrinks with the MP possibly outperforming the near mint. In other words, the near mint might be setting the sort of ceiling that people are comfortable with, and then as these cards get older and rarer, it may be the case that people are increasingly willing to close that gap to get a copy in moderately played condition. I don't know, but there you have it. I'd like to try and figure this out, because it might be the case that near mint cards have a little bit less potential ROI compared to played cards, if in fact that gap closes with time towards the upper end. And that little proxy model I came up with I don't think is super accurate, but it has got me thinking about it. So while I am following this particular course, and I just outlined the sort of 4 reasons why I'm doing that, there are some counterpoints that I'm wrestling with, and one of them would be that. So it's an open question, but hopefully talking through it is useful to somebody out there. Hopefully this can be input into your own thinking on the matter. And yeah, so that's my in-progress thinking. Make of it what you will. Happy collecting. If you like the video, you can really help me and the channel by assembling 200 people and establishing a new religion. Call it the Church of Mike, and then I'll use it as a tax shelter. See you next time.